Hey, it's Meg. Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be making the journal that I will be using for the Junk Journal January challenge, which is happening next month. And if you haven't seen the announcement with all the information about the prompts and the collab and all the fun stuff that we've got going on throughout the month, then I will leave all the information down below. So if you'd like to join us next month for the challenge, then you can do. So I'm going to be making a normal, well, I say normal, a like pamphlet stitch journal. In the past, I've made a couple of different styles of journals. So the no-sew journal, which I know a lot of you guys have fun with making, is one that I've used for a couple of challenges in the past. And I'll also leave links down below if you want to check out how to make a no-sew journal, and also some flip throughs to show you what it looks like once you've filled it up. It's a really fun format to play with, but I just wanted to do something bound for this challenge. I did an accordion back in July, so I'm kind of feeling like I'm in the doing a bound journal for January and then doing an accordion for July, just because it's fun and it's nice to mix it up a little bit. And with some of the papers that I had, as you'll see, I was sort of rifling through my stash of all sorts of bits and pieces, which I think is one of the most fun things about junk journal challenges and just junk journaling in general, is being able to just literally look at anything that you have. So you'll see there I had like random envelopes. I'll bring out some packaging of different things, some offcuts, and just being able to use an eclectic mix of things, and that mentality of like anything goes. There's no like rules or certain things you have to use. So it's really fun, and I wanted to use some of those in a bit of a different way in this journal. So that's why I decided to go for just the pamphlet stitch for this journal, but I did end up using some Amazon packaging you'll see later for the cover. So it is kind of more on the side of a true junk journal, if you will, in that sense, because I've used something that would literally go in the recycling. And what I'm cutting up here is a free printable that you can access if you sign up for the challenge. So the challenge is in collaboration with the lovely folks over at Get Messy, and we've got, you know, all sorts of different fun things happening, like a live event. We've got the YouTube collaboration, and then there's also this printable you can access if you'd like. I know I don't tend to use like a huge amount of digitals and printables in the things that I do personally, but I do think that these are really cute, and I wanted to use some of them on the cover of my journal. So it's just there if you'd like to download it and use it in your own creations. You could use it throughout the challenge, you could use it in your journal for something else, but it's just there if you want to have it as a little bit of a kickstart for some inspiration and some fodder for your journal, basically. So I'm just cutting this up here, and I don't use all of them, but I just wanted to have them to choose from. So the process that I normally go with when I'm making a journal is that I will, like I said, go through all my papers, and all I'll do is literally think about the kind of colours and textures that I want to have in the journal, so the different papers, and I'll literally just create like one giant pile. So it won't necessarily be that everything that I've picked out I will use for that journal. I'm just literally collecting a huge big pile of stuff. As you'll see, I've got, you know, tags there, graph paper, I've got some tracing paper here, which oh gosh, that's a funny story. I was trying to buy some vellum paper on Amazon, and I ordered it, and I should have read the reviews more carefully because they actually delivered me tracing paper instead of vellum, which, I mean, I can still use it in my journal, but it was just really annoying, and you know, when you don't get what you expected to order. But yeah, like I said, pick out all the different papers, and then I can start to assemble and see what works and what goes together. So this is the Amazon bag that I mentioned that I'm going to use for my cover. I promise this video is not sponsored by Amazon. I've said it a few times, but it just, the way it is, it happens to be the brown paper that I had to hand. I've been ordering, bits for the studio and things. I got some fairy lights for my bookshelf. So this is just what I had to hand, which, like I said, is just a really fun part of junk journaling, I think. And because this was a slightly thinner brown paper, I decided to turn it inside out, the bag, and then glue it together so that I had a bit more of a structured cover, because I knew I wanted to do a soft cover, but I just didn't want it to be too flimsy. So it just gave it a little bit of extra strength when it came to the actual cover itself. So I asked over on Instagram if you guys had any questions about the Junk Journal January challenge, and I thought I could answer a few of them in this video whilst I'm showing you this process of making the journal. So I'll try and answer as many as I can, but if I don't answer your question or you have another question, then please do leave a comment down below. So one of the first questions I wanted to answer was, do you have any tips on sticking to it every day? So sticking to a daily art journaling prompt challenge like this, where there's something to do every day, can be a really great thing in terms of building up the practice of showing up and creating every day. However, it can also feel a little bit daunting, especially if you've got like loads of things going on and you're busy, etc., etc. So I think one of the first things to say is, obviously there's no rules when it comes to this. So if you just want to like dip in and do a few prompts, that's completely fine. This is not like a homework assignment, so please don't feel pressured to feel like you have to do everything. I really want this to be like a really supportive community for just showing up and creating as much or as little as you would like during the challenge. And the important thing is to have fun. But if you are wanting to maybe challenge yourself a little bit and think, okay, I'm actually going to try and show up and create every day. I mean, especially because, hey, it's January, it's New Year's resolutions. Maybe one of your New Year's resolutions is to create something every day. Then having a prompt like this can be really useful, I find, because it gives you something to kickstart your creating. So I think the first thing is to set some realistic expectations of what you are going to do for the challenge. So, you're not going to create some really intricate, incredible spread every single day, most likely. It might just be spending 5 minutes or 10 minutes doing something, making some marks, creating some ephemera to go in tomorrow's spread, for example. So I think it's just important to set that expectation of, I'm going to carve out, say, 10-15 minutes. I'm going to prioritize, sitting down and actually responding to the prompt. And I think, the key to obviously any daily challenge is to make it a bit of a habit. So maybe it's having a specific time of the day that you're going to work in your journal, even if it's just for a couple of minutes. Building up that consistency, I find, is really helpful. The other thing that I think is great, especially if you've not done a challenge like this before, is to start small. So I would always recommend having maybe an A6 journal or even smaller, and that way then you don't have as much space to fill every day, and it becomes a lot more manageable. And I personally like working fairly small anyway. I don't go any bigger normally than an A5, and even then I find that like a lot of space to do like an A5 double page spread. If you watch some of my process videos of previous challenges, you'll notice sometimes I even just work on one side of the spread per day. So the entire page, as it were, both right hand side and left hand side, will take like 2 days worth. So it's kind of having those two prompts on the page. So you don't have to fill, the entire spread. You can also just work on one side, or you can even work in a corner. It's totally up to you. I think the fun thing about binding a journal like this, when you have pages that are different sizes as well, is that some days you'll have larger pages to work on, and then some days, I'll come across a page that is a lot smaller in size. Maybe it's a bit narrower or a bit shorter. And you can kind of push yourself creatively with working in that constraint anyway, but it's also just then a smaller, like lower pressure page for you to create. So it's all about, I think, making it manageable for yourself, setting those expectations so you've not got that pressure. And then the third thing I would say is maybe try and make yourself a little bit of a sort of go-to junk journaling kit. So grab maybe a box or some sort of container, like a pouch, and put all of the supplies that you would like to use into that. So your favorite things, or a collection of scrap papers that you'd like to use throughout the challenge, because not only is that going to help you in terms of making the pages like cohesive throughout the entire journal, it also just means that when you show up to create, you've got everything that you need right in front of you, and it makes that process a lot easier rather than thinking about, okay, what papers am I going to use? And then there's the inevitable, like, you'll spend 10 minutes going through your papers. And I don't know if anyone else has this, but sometimes it's like if I've gone through a bin of things that I've got, and when you come across things and you forget that you have them, and then you just go down an absolute rabbit hole looking at all different things, and then you've completely forgotten the original task that you were even doing. So I find sometimes that just having that container of supplies and things that you want to use throughout the challenge makes it so much easier. I'll probably be putting together my own little kit, as it were, of things that I want to use to make it easier for myself. So if it would be helpful for you guys, I can share a video of putting that together, show you guys what I'm going to be putting in it, the types of supplies, so to give you guys some ideas for creating your own version of that you can use throughout the challenge. Okay, I'm gonna have to not ramble as much for the next questions if I want to get through many of these in this video. So the next question I had was, do most people make their own journal or use an existing one? So this is really interesting. So personally, I like to make a new journal for each of the challenges, and the interesting thing I find with these in particular versus maybe other junk journals or journals that I have is that they become much more of a reference almost. So because I know which pages are tied to certain prompts, sometimes I'll do like a different technique, or I'll try something new, and then I tend to like go back and reference and just have that catalogue of things that I've tried that I can then use in other stuff. So I very much treat the challenges as more of a playground as well, because the nature of all the prompts is that, yes, they're quite open-ended, but I do tend to try and mix in some that are more like safe prompts, a bit more they're like easier to potentially think of things to do. And then I do put in a few that are, I don't want to say they're like tricky prompts, but they make you think a little bit more. There's always a few, and I get some questions from people that they're like, what do you mean by certain prompts? And yeah, I just think that sometimes it's good to have that mix so you can kind of have that creative thinking about what you actually want to do. And of course, there's no like right answer to the prompts, because the great thing I find when I go through people's creations from each of the day's prompts is that no two people's responses to the prompts are the same, and there's always people that come up with things and I just go, wow, I would have never thought to have like created along those lines for the prompt. People that think outside the box or just take it like a completely different way. And I think that's the really fun thing about the more open-ended prompts, is it gives you a lot more freedom to create different things. So that's why personally I like to use and create a new journal for the challenges. But of course, you can always use a journal you've got on the go if you want to use that for the prompts as well. There's no set rule on that as well. You can totally do what works for you. So if you know that you're gonna have more fun doing it, just incorporating the prompts within your existing journaling and your existing creative practice, then by all means use the prompts in that way. And I think as well, don't forget we've got several challenges in the past with prompts. So if you want to, head back to the challenge in 2021 and work with a couple of those prompts as well, then by all means do that. This is just the list, obviously, that I've put together for this year, but I just want to create that community atmosphere where we can all create together and have fun with junk journaling. So whether you're making a new journal or whether you're using your existing one, the main thing is to just have fun with the challenge, I think. So the next question was about finding your style. So, what are the best tips on finding your style? And this is interesting because I feel like I kind of have a style, but not really. I class it as knowing what I like. So I know I like to use certain colours and a certain imagery, and I think that kind of is your style, because it's, if you are showing up in your journal and you're being authentic and you're using the colours you love and you're using the materials you love, and the themes and all the imagery, etc., etc., then it's naturally going to be in your style. And I think the important thing about that is that no two people's styles are really the same, because we're all coming at it from a different angle. So, you have different preferences of things you like. We have different materials that we're using, especially with junk journaling, if we're doing a lot of upcycling and recycling of things. I think the main thing is to just use the things that you enjoy and the things that you like. And having a consistent color palette can maybe help you feel like you're developing that style a little bit more. But I would say the best way to find out the things that you like and you don't, to work on perhaps that more personal style, is to try new things. Because if you experiment and try new things, you quickly learn what you do and don't like. And it's all that learning process that kind of takes you then to the kind of art that you want to make within your junk journal. So, I don't use a lot of super bright colours, for example. Mine's a lot more muted and toned down. And if I pulled you out a journal from like 6-7 years ago, you might find some really bright colours. You might not even think that you wouldn't recognize it as my journal, for example, or my art style. And things do evolve, our tastes evolve, but being able to experiment with all those things, like I used to create some really like wacky acrylic backgrounds, because that's what I used to see loads of other people creating in their art journals. And don't get me wrong, it was fun to do, but it wasn't my vibe. And I feel like sometimes you can really tell, like when you're doing certain things in your journal with certain materials or with color palettes, especially. You find what gels with the things that you like. So, acrylic, brightly colored backgrounds are super fun, but they don't make a Meg journal page, in my opinion. Things that, make a Meg journal page are the florals and the coffee dye and the book page like collage scrappy backgrounds. So all that to say, don't be afraid to experiment and try new things, and don't also be afraid to keep using the things that you love, because that is kind of what your style is. I will repeat things within my journals because it's just what I love. There's flowers everywhere. I'm constantly cutting out botanical imagery and things to use in my journal, and sometimes it might feel slightly repetitive, but it's just the things that I enjoy doing. I remember I was using a stencil in one of my previous challenge videos, I think it was. I just really loved the stencil with some like white acrylic, like sponged through it. And I kept using it because I was like, oh, I really love this stencil. Like, I love the effect that it's giving. And I remember someone asking, like, have you got any other stencils? Like, you keep using this stencil. I'm bored of seeing it. And I was just sort of like, well, but I love using it. And so, yeah, I was just gonna keep using that stencil until I was sick of it. And I haven't used it in a while, so maybe I'll bring it out again. But it was just funny because, that kind of was becoming a little bit of like part of my style to use a stencil like that. And it was just fun to try it on different backgrounds, on different materials, and figure out what I liked about it. So that's what I would have to say when it comes to style. The next question I had was, how do you come up with such great prompts? So the prompts is something that I have to think about for a good while, to be honest. And I really try and toe that line between something that is going to make sense for a lot of people, but that is also broad enough that it can be, interpreted in different ways. It's open enough that you can take it and run with it if you want to, and also having a nice variety. So I tend to think about things as like imagery and themes. So what different visual components can I work into prompts? So, the things like florals or bookshelf that we've got, for example, that's more of a themed prompt in that bucket. And then another bucket of prompts that I'll sort of brainstorm is to do with materials that you can use in your journal. So maybe it's coffee staining, or maybe it's stencils, something that's more like technique and material based. And then oftentimes ones that are a little bit more like feelings. I don't know how else to describe it. So the ones where we've got that's like whimsical and things like that, where it's really broad and you could really just take it and run with it however you would like. So I think that's the kind of three categories that I try and think about with the prompts, with the hope that there's enough variation and variety in those, and a good mix that people can kind of get really stuck in to different prompts. And something that Barbara from 49 Dragonflies did a while ago was she did like a video where she combined a few of the prompts. So I think she just like cut them up and picked them out of a hat or something. And because there's such a different range of prompts, it's a really fun way of them being able to mix and match them as well. So you don't necessarily have to just stick to one prompt a day. You can do three in one and sort of mix them up and come up with different ways of approaching them. So that's my kind of thought process when it comes to coming up with some prompts. Okay, so I didn't get round to as many questions as I thought I would. I just sort of rambled on there, didn't I, for some of the questions? But I hope this was helpful for you. Like I said, if you have any other questions, things I didn't get around to, things you want answers to, then please leave a comment down below and I will get back to you. But this is my journal for the challenge. I'm super excited to start creating in this and to share it with you guys. As I say, if you want to get involved in the Junk Journal January challenge, I'd love to have you. All the information is linked down below. I do hope you can join in with the fun. It's going to be such a great month. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. As always, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.